Hello, Mr. Polyev. Jonathan Bradley, Western Standard. My question for you is, given the release of the Public Order Emergency Commission's report and rising Western alienation, it's clear there is divisions among Canadians. What role has Prime Minister Justin Trudeau played in this division, and how can it be resolved?
He hasn't played a role. He is the division. His purpose is to divide and conquer. He believes that if he can turn Canadians against each other, then they'll forget how miserable life has become after 8 years of his tax hikes, inflation, and out-of-control cost of living. With costs, crime, and corruption raging after 8 years of Justin Trudeau, it's no wonder he wants the focus off him, and he wants Canadians fighting with each other. So you can expect him to continue to divide people by race, region, vaccine status, and any other fault line that he can invent. But instead of divide and distract, what we need to do is unite for hope, to bring people together and tell them that tomorrow can be better than today. Let's just remove all these painful taxes that have driven people into poverty. Let's end the inflationary deficits that send the cost of living up faster than at any time in 40 years. Let's clear the bureaucratic blockades to build millions of new homes so our young people can actually have a roof over their head and not just live in their parents' basements. And let's bring back freedom of speech and freedom of expression so everybody can have a voice again in this big, beautiful, wonderful country of ours. Let's unite our people for hope, and let's bring it home. Thank you.
This Prime Minister thinks that if you're afraid of your neighbor, you might forget that you can't afford your rent to feed yourself or to heat your home. But don't take my word for it. The Liberal MP for Louis-Hébert has called out this divide and conquer strategy. He said, it's time to stop dividing Canadians and stop pitting one part of the population against the other. Speaker, we couldn't agree more. Will the Prime Minister take his own MP's advice and stop tearing our great country apart?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our government has been there for Canadians during this difficult time of global economic uncertainty. We are rallying Canadians, and they are working harder than ever. In fact, 150,000 jobs were created in January alone, and women's participation rate in the economy is at a historic high. Canadians are standing together, side by side, in order to make it through these times.
For Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Side by side, the Liberal member for Louis-Hébert said a decision was made to divide and stigmatize. That's exactly what this Prime Minister has done. Working people are struggling to pay their bills, and Liberal insiders, they're getting rich. Urban Canadians have been pitted against their rural neighbours. This Prime Minister even labelled Canadians who disagreed with him as racist and misogynist. When will this Prime Minister follow the lead of Canada's Conservatives, who will unite Canadians instead of dividing and stigmatizing?
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I have enormous respect for the member, but I'm surprised that we would be talking down the Canadian economy at a time where we have record investment coming in our country. Mr. Speaker, I think my colleagues is forgetting that, for example, we rebuild the whole biomanufacturing sector. We got investment like Moderna in Canada, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we got further investment when it comes to the battery ecosystem. Now, Bloomberg ranks Canada second in the world, just after China, ahead of the United States. Mr. Speaker, we have the first gigafactory in Canada to build batteries, and we built the largest hydrogen plant just in Edmonton. Mr. Speaker, it's going well.
Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rideau Lakes.
Well, I don't think that the people who can't afford to feed themselves or heat their homes, who've experienced their rent or mortgage doubling, the 20% of Canadians who are skipping meals, the 1.5 million Canadians who are lined up at food banks would say that it's going well. But that's the tactic from these Liberals. They tell you that even though you can't afford to feed yourself, you've never had it so good. Let them eat cake, this Prime Minister says. The Liberal member for Louis-Hébert said it's time to stop with the divisions and the distractions like that one. It's time to use positive, not coercive methods. It's time to unite. And that's what Conservatives will do, from Victoria, BC to Victoria by the Sea. When are they going to follow our lead?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Minister of Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians see that this particular Conservative Party has zero credibility on the economy. Their economic policy can be summed up by gutting the Canada Pension Plan, gutting employment insurance, abandoning our fight against climate change, and of course, investing in cryptocurrency as a way to opt out of inflation. It is entirely irresponsible, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Mégantic-L'Érable.
Monsieur le Président, après 8 ans.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years with this Liberal Prime Minister, his policies to divide Canadians have only succeeded in breaking everything he touches. The Prime Minister thinks that by dividing Canadians, that they'll forget that groceries are more expensive, that families can't make ends meet, that many youth have given up their dream to ever own a home. The member for Louis-Hébert said that a decision was made by their government to divide and stigmatize. Why have the Liberals have decided that it's best to divide and conquer? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary? Mr. Speaker, it's difficult to hear from politicians who claim that we're using division and who use it themselves. Every political party should be acting as a unifier. We should all be working together. We should all recognize that we have different positions, but that we can work together. That's our goal with the government. We're all going to work together. The Honourable Member from Mégantic-L'Érable. After 8 years, he even succeeded in dividing his own caucus, Mr. Speaker. There's not a day that goes by without a member like the one who just spoke, or a former minister, or a minister, or any kind of Liberal denounces this government's decisions to prop up his own leadership and apply his divisive policies within his own party, and it seems to work, unfortunately. It's time to work. Will he admit his responsibility, stop dividing Canadians, or just get out of the way to allow the Conservatives to unite Canadians to give them back a little bit of hope? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, let's talk about responsibility. The Conservative economic policy can be summarized as abandoning our fight against the climate crisis, attacking EI, attacking support for seniors, and suggest that Canadians invest in cryptocurrency. We are a responsible government, and we have a responsible plan. Thank you.
At the heart of any definition of leadership is the ability to unify people for a common purpose or cause. But after 8 years of this Liberal Prime Minister, Canadians have never been more divided. He has used issues like mandates to pit Canadians against each other and distract from the issues and the problems he's caused. He believes that if you're afraid of your neighbour, you'll forget that you can't afford your rent or your groceries or even heat your home. Even his own MPs are calling him out for this divisive behaviour. The brave Liberal member from Louis-Hébert suggested, and I quote, "From a positive and unifying approach, a decision was made to wedge, divide, and stigmatize. It's time to stop the divisions and distractions. It's time to be positive. It's time not to use coercive methods, but it's time for us to unite." I could not agree more. It's time for us to put the politics of division behind us and unite a country behind a Conservative Prime Minister who can bring prosperity back to Canada. It's time to turn hurt into hope.